I'll never forget the first time I set foot in the Honey Island swamp. I thought I was just exploring, an experienced outdoorsman familiar with Louisiana's wetlands, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. It started at twilight. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the water a dull, oily black. I was following a narrow waterway, my boat gliding silently over the shallow water, and the cypress trees hung over me like ancient sentinels. At first, I was just the silence, not the quiet you expect in nature, but a wrong kind of silence. The air itself seemed heavy, almost watching. Then I heard it, a splash, not the quick, nervous movement of a raccoon or an alligator sliding into the water. This was deliberate, calculated. Someone or something was moving in the water nearby. I froze. My heart was hammering, my flashlight shaking in my grip. I caught a glimpse through the hanging moss, a figure, tall, dark, humanoid, moving with an eerie calm. I told myself it was a bear, or maybe a man playing tricks on me, but the way it stepped, upright, measured, almost patient, didn't match anything I had ever seen in the wild. And then it paused, turned, and I swear I saw eyes, deep, dark, intelligent, like it was studying me, wondering if I belonged here. I don't know how long I stared. Seconds felt like minutes, and then it slipped back into the shadows, leaving the swamp to swallow its secret once more. I was alone, shaken, and I knew I had just witnessed something that didn't belong in any guidebook or zoology report. Something alive, unseen by most, right here in Honey Island Swamp. I couldn't shake it, even after I paddled back to the small clearing where I had docked. My mind kept replaying that figure. Something about the way it moved, deliberate and silent, haunted me. The next morning, I returned alone this time. I had to see if there was proof, something tangible. The swamp had a way of hiding its secrets, but I knew the banks, the mud, the shallow trails. I scanned every inch carefully. Then I saw them. Footprints, not the small, uneven impressions of deer or raccoons. These were massive, almost twice the size of a man's foot, pressed deep into the wet mud along the water's edge. 5 toes, broad, heavy, spaced in a way that made me realize the creature didn't just walk, it balanced. I crouched low, my fingers tracing the edges of the mud cast by the first print. My stomach twisted. Whoever or whatever made this was enormous, taller than a man, heavier than a bear, and moving upright as if it owned this swamp. I followed the trail slowly, careful not to snap a branch or disturb the mud. Every step made my heart pound louder than the insect buzz around me. Then I heard it again, soft, deliberate splashes farther ahead, not fast, not running, walking. I froze. The trail ended abruptly near a narrow canal, the prints fading under shallow water. My flashlight swept across the bank, and there it was. Just a shadow at first, but unmistakable, tall, broad, the hair wet and clinging to its massive frame. Its head turned slightly, and I swear it tilted as if it recognized I was there. I wanted to speak, to call out, but no sound came. The air itself seemed to hold my breath for me, and then, just like that, it stepped into the water and disappeared into the tangled cypress, leaving nothing but ripples behind. I realized then The Honey Island swamp monster wasn't just a story or a legend. It was real, patient, and it knew exactly how to avoid me. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of my cabin, every chirp outside, my mind replayed those enormous footprints and the shadow in the canal. I kept telling myself I'd imagined it, but the mud, the prints, they didn't lie. The next morning, I returned to the swamp before sunrise. Mist hung low over the water, thick enough to dull the edges of my flashlight beam. I slipped my boat quietly into the canal, every muscle tense, every sense alert. Then I saw it again, not a shadow this time, a movement, a shape, wading slowly in the shallow water ahead. My pulse jumped. 7 feet tall, broad shoulders, wet, dark fur clinging to a frame that seemed too powerful for any human. It paused, almost casually, its massive hands brushing the water as if testing the current. I could see the way its head turned, scanning the canal, and my stomach went cold. Those were no animal eyes. They were aware, calculating, watching me as I watched it. I raised my camera, hands trembling. A single frame captured the creature mid-step, long, muscular arms, thick legs moving with unnatural grace, its chest rising and falling in slow, deliberate breaths. I realized it wasn't afraid of me, or maybe it just didn't care. And then I noticed the sound, not growls, not roars, a low, almost human-like exhale that echoed faintly across the water. My heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I was rooted, unable to look away. It lingered just long enough for me to memorize every detail. Then, without warning, it stepped deeper into the canal and vanished into the dense cypress. No splash, no sound, nothing but the disturbed water fading back into stillness. I stayed there for hours afterward, gripping the boat, unable to believe what I had seen. This was no ordinary swamp creature. This was something intelligent, something ancient, something that had lived there, hidden, for longer than anyone could know. I couldn't stay away. The shadow in the water had taken root in my mind, and every instinct screamed at me not to go back, but I needed to know, I needed to see it again. At first light, I launched my small boat into the mist-choked canal. The swamp felt different this time, not just quiet, oppressively silent, like it was holding its breath. My paddle sliced through the dark water, sending tiny ripples across the black reflection of twisted cypress, and then I heard it. Soft, deliberate movement ahead. The water shifted, not with the clumsy splash of a deer or raccoon, but with purpose. Every step measured, every motion intentional. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and crept closer, heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. Through the thick curtain of moss, I finally saw it again. 7 feet tall, hair dark as wet night, moving with an unnatural balance through the water and mud. Its massive arms swung slowly, like a predator testing the limits of its environment. But what froze me in place were the eyes, intelligent, calculating, unblinking, staring straight at me as if weighing my birth. I drifted closer, almost involuntarily. My boat scraped a branch. I held my breath. The creature flinched, not in fear, but in recognition. Its head tilted, sniffing the air. I could feel its presence in every nerve, like the swamp itself had condensed into a living, breathing thing. And then the unimaginable happened. It turned slightly, lifting one enormous hand just above the water, and I swear I could almost touch it. The hairs on its arms were thick, clumped with swamp water, and the muscles beneath shifted with the subtle power I had never imagined. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of us. My pulse echoed in my ears. Every instinct screamed, escape, but part of me was frozen and traced, witnessing a creature that shouldn't exist outside nightmares or legends. Then it melted into the dense swamp, moving silently through the twisted maze of cypress, leaving only disturbed water and my own ragged breathing behind. I knew one thing: the Honey Island swamp monster wasn't just alive, it was aware, and it was patient, letting me watch just enough to know it could have ended the encounter at any moment. I left the swamp that day different, shaken, certain of one terrifying truth. The legend was real, and whatever moved through those waters was far older, far smarter, and far more elusive than anyone could imagine. I spent the next hour just drifting in my boat, staring at the water where it had vanished. My hands were numb and my chest heaved as if I'd run a mile. I kept replaying its moment, the tilt of its head, the way it had paused as if to study me. Then I noticed something I hadn't before: the mud along the bank, footprints, massive, impossibly wide, pressed deep into the wet earth, 5 toes, human-like, but stretched and elongated, spaced in a way no bear, no man could match. I leaned closer, brushing the edges of one print with my fingers. The weight, the depth, it made my palms sweat. Whoever or whatever made these prints carried more than just its mass. It carried power. I followed the trail slowly, barely breathing. The prints led deeper into a narrow canal, winding like a serpent between ancient cypress trees. I could see the water disturbed, the surface rippling where it had waded, almost like a warning. Every instinct screamed for me to leave, but I couldn't. There was something magnetic about this swamp, something that drew me forward, demanding I see more. Then I heard it, a low, subtle splash behind me. My heart skipped a beat. I spun my flashlight around. Nothing. Just mist curling along the water. I tried to tell myself it was imagination, but I knew better. This swamp had secrets, and one of them had just made sure I knew I was aware of me. I realized then I wasn't just observing the Honey Island swamp monster. I was being observed. Every step I took, every ripple I made, it was watching, waiting, calculating. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream and row back to the riverbank, but a part of me, a part I didn't understand, wanted to follow it, to know how far this creature's domain extended and how it survived, unseen, for so long. That day I left the swamp with more questions than answers. One truth had become undeniable. The Honey Island swamp monster was real, and it was far more intelligent and far more patient than any human could ever imagine. I went back again, though I swore I wouldn't, but by now the swamp felt alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. Every shadow seemed heavier, every ripple in the water more deliberate. It was as if the swamp itself was watching me, waiting for me to step wrong. This time, I stayed hidden, moving quietly along a narrow channel. The morning mist clung to my face and soaked my jacket. My eyes caught movement ahead, something large slipping between the trees, not running, not rushing, just gliding, almost floating across the water. I ducked behind a fallen cypress trunk, holding my breath. The creature emerged fully into view, 7 feet tall, shoulders broad, wet fur glistening in the pale sunlight. Its head tilted slowly, scanning the surroundings, and then it paused and looked directly at me. I swear its eyes weren't just watching, they were thinking. I could feel a presence, a consciousness in the way it observed me, the way it adjusted its stance, as if weighing my next move. This wasn't instinct, this was intelligence. I wanted to move, I wanted to flee, but every step I considered, every shift in the boat seemed to echo louder than normal, and I realized something chilling. The swamp. The swamp had rules I couldn't understand, and I was a guest, an intruder, luckily to escape unscathed. I left that day changed. The Honey Island swamp monster was no longer just a story or legend. It was a living, thinking entity, and in its swamp I had learned a terrifying truth. Humans were not the rulers here. I left the swamp that night with more questions than answers. The Honey Island swamp monster had revealed itself to me, but only partially, enough to prove it was real, enough to make me tremble, enough to make me question everything I thought I knew about this world. Over the following weeks, I tried to piece together what I had seen: the footprints, the disturbed water, the glimpses of massive dark fur and intelligent eyes. They all pointed to something extraordinary, something older than the humans who dared to explore its domain. Locals still whisper about it. Hunters, fishermen, and swamp guides all have stories, some fearful, some awestruck. But no one can capture it completely. No camera, no trap, no human mind can fully understand it. And maybe that's the point. The Honey Island swamp monster isn't just a creature, it's a guardian of its world, a living legend, a reminder that there are places in this world where humans are not the apex. Even now, whenever I pass a shadowed canal or hear the water shift in the Louisiana wetlands, I feel it. The presence of something watching, something aware and waiting. I don't claim to understand it. I only know this. The Honey Island swamp monster is real, and its legend is far from over. And somewhere in those tangled waters, it still walks, silent and patient, reminding the world that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved.